Maya was exhausted, 7 months pregnant and just trying to get home. She had pictured this flight as nothing more than a long, quiet stretch in the sky. But she had no idea that in a matter of seconds, everything would spiral into chaos. The cabin was buzzing with passengers settling in, the hum of engines filling the air when Bianca, a flight attendant with a reputation for being sharp and unyielding, approached Maya. The tension in her eyes was unmistakable. Words were exchanged, and before Maya could react, Bianca's hand struck her face. A hard, shocking slap. Pain, shock, humiliation. Maya clutched her belly as her baby kicked violently, as if sensing the danger. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Some passengers whispered, some stared, but no one dared intervene. Fear gripped her chest. She was trapped hundreds of miles above the ground, powerless and utterly vulnerable. But Maya's eyes held a secret, one that would soon turn this nightmare upside down. Because she wasn't just any passenger, and Omar, her husband, the man waiting for her at the airport, wasn't just anyone either. He owned the airline. A single slap had triggered a chain reaction that no one in that cabin could have predicted. Tension thickened. Whispered guesses swirled, but no one suspected the explosive truth lying just beneath the surface. A truth that could shatter careers, destroy reputations, and shake the airline industry to its core. The question hung in the air. How could one reckless act collide with power, influence, and revenge? Would justice strike mid-flight, or would Maya have to wait until she touched the ground? And what would happen when everyone discovered who her husband really was? This is a story of shock, courage, and fate colliding in the most unexpected way. One impulsive slap, one brave woman, and a husband with the power to change everything. What happened next wasn't just dramatic. It was unforgettable, and it's about to leave everyone watching on the edge of their seats. Maya woke up to the warm morning sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. The soft hum of the city outside mingled with the faint cry of her baby's sibling in the womb. A life growing inside her, a symbol of hope and family. Her apartment smelled faintly of fresh coffee, cinnamon, and the roses Omar had left on the kitchen counter the night before. Life, she thought, was finally finding its rhythm. Omar was already in the home office, reviewing airline schedules and contracts on his laptop. He was calm, methodical, and protective, a man who had built his empire from scratch, but never let success harden his heart. Despite the long hours, he always made time for Maya, for their quiet conversations over breakfast, for the small touches that reminded her she was never alone. Maya herself had carved a life of resilience. She worked part-time as a freelance graphic designer, often staying up late into the night to finish projects. Her friends admired her spirit, neighbors respected her kindness, and her family loved her fiercely. She had always known that being black in a world that often judged by skin tone wasn't easy, but she had learned to navigate it with grace, intelligence, and a stubborn sense of pride. On this particular morning, Maya was preparing for a flight. It was supposed to be routine, a short trip to visit family in another city. She packed her bag carefully, making sure to bring snacks, water, and a cozy sweater. She hummed softly, imagining the reunion with her mother, the smell of her grandmother's cooking, and the comfort of familiar streets. But even in these quiet moments of contentment, there were subtle hints of the challenges ahead. She noticed the way some cab drivers hesitated when she got in, the subtle glances of other passengers at the airport as she walked by. Not overt, not violent, yet enough to remind her that the world didn't always see her as equal. And for Omar, who had fought battles she could never fully imagine, these microaggressions were a constant, invisible weight he carried silently, even while trying to shield her. Maya didn't dwell on it. Life was too full, too precious. But the seeds of tension were quietly planting themselves in the backdrop of her seemingly ordinary morning. It was a calm before a storm, one that would arrive in the most unexpected, violent way, as she zipped her suitcase and glanced in the mirror, smoothing her hair and adjusting her scarf. She didn't know that this day, this flight, would become a turning point. A moment where prejudice, ignorance, and authority collided in a way she never anticipated, threatening not only her dignity but the safety of the life she carried. And as she stepped out the door, bright sunlight on her face and the city alive with possibility. She had no idea how quickly the world could turn from familiar warmth to cold. Shocking injustice. Maya had settled into her seat, clutching her ticket and the edge of her bag, trying to calm her racing heart. The hum of the airplane engines was supposed to be soothing, but the unease she had felt that morning began to creep back. She noticed Bianca walking down the aisle, her posture rigid, eyes scanning every passenger like a hawk. Something about her expression made Maya's stomach twist with unease, but she shook it off. Maybe she was just tired. Minutes passed, and then it happened. Bianca stopped at Maya's row, her tone sharp and cold. "Ma'am, you can't have your bag here," she snapped, gesturing to the overhead compartment. Maya tried to explain politely that she had already checked the instructions, that this was her personal bag, her voice calm, measured, professional. But Bianca wasn't listening. The words escalated into a tense back and forth, the volume rising, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. "Excuse me, is there a problem?" a young man asked from across the aisle. Maya shook her head, embarrassed. She wanted to disappear. Then came the slap. It wasn't just a tap, it was violent, public, shocking. Gasps erupted from every corner of the cabin. Maya clutched her belly, knees trembling. The pain wasn't just physical. It was humiliation, disbelief, rage, and fear all rolled into one. Passengers whispered, but no one intervened. Bianca, smirking, acted as though she had done nothing wrong. And in that moment, Maya realized that the problem wasn't just Bianca. The system itself, the airline, the people trained to enforce authority, the silent complicity of onlookers, had failed her. As the plane continued its ascent, Maya's frustration turned into quiet fury. She thought of Omar, of the life she was carrying, and of every subtle microaggression she had endured her entire life. And yet this was blatant, public, dangerous. When the flight finally landed, the ordeal didn't end. At the gate, airport staff questioned her as if she were the problem, ignoring her bruised cheek, her trembling hands, the visible signs of her trauma. She tried to explain, but her words were drowned out by bureaucracy, paperwork, and rules that seemed designed to protect the aggressor, not the victim. And just when it seemed like she might be trapped in endless frustration, a whisper spread. Omar had been on the phone with the airline executives the entire time. He knew. The man whose empire Bianca worked for, whose authority seemed untouchable, was aware of every slap, every insult, every moment of public shame. Maya didn't know it yet, but the tension was only mounting. Bianca's actions had ignited a chain reaction. Colleagues whispered, passengers glanced nervously, and the higher-ups were forced to take notice. Yet in the moment it all felt like a cruel game, a test of endurance, patience, and courage. As she stepped off the plane, bruised and shaken, Maya couldn't help but ask herself, what would it take for justice to be served? Could one woman, one act of aggression, truly be enough to challenge a system built on privilege and indifference? And more importantly, how far would those in power go to protect themselves? And how far would she go to demand what was right? The airport lounge was buzzing with chatter, rolling suitcases, and the distant announcements echoing overhead. But for Maya, everything else had faded into background noise. Her cheek still stung from Bianca's slap, and the anger she had tried to suppress boiled up in her chest like a wildfire. Every step toward the exit felt like walking through a storm. She spotted Bianca near the gate, casually chatting with a supervisor, as if nothing had happened. The audacity was unbearable. Maya's hands clenched at her sides, and she felt the life inside her kick, a reminder that she was not powerless. This was not just about her. It was about respect, dignity, and refusing to let prejudice define her worth. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice steady but sharp. Bianca turned, smirking, expecting the usual submissive apologies or forced politeness. But Maya wasn't that woman anymore. "You think you can treat me like I'm nothing?" she demanded, her words slicing through the noise of the lounge. Passengers stopped, their heads turning, sensing the rising tension. Bianca laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "Oh, it's just a little slap." "Don't be dramatic," Bianca said, stepping closer, her authority leaning into intimidation. But Maya's eyes didn't flinch. in that moment Omar appeared. He had been monitoring the situation from behind the scenes, contacting executives and coordinating responses, but now he stepped into the lounge. His presence was commanding, subtle power radiating from every gesture. Bianca froze, the smirk faltering as she realized this was no ordinary passenger. This was the wife of the airline owner. "I believe you owe my wife an apology," Omar said calmly, but every word carried weight. The room seemed to hold its breath. Passengers leaned in, some recording with their phones, whispers spreading like wildfire. Bianca's facade cracked, but she tried to maintain control. Bianca stammered, fumbling for words. But the combination of Omar's authority, Maya's visible anger, and the mounting public scrutiny made it impossible to recover. The tables had turned. Maya, feeling the intensity of the moment, spoke directly to the surrounding crowd. "Do you see this?" she asked, her voice clear, resonant. "This is what it's like to face prejudice and disrespect. This is what happens when someone assumes power gives them the right to humiliate another human being." Her words echoed, drawing attention from everyone nearby. Phones were raised, cameras capturing the confrontation. The crowd's energy shifted. Sympathy and outrage spread, a collective sense of justice swelling. Bianca realized she was isolated, exposed. And for the first time, Maya felt a surge of power, not from violence, not from anger, but from courage and standing up for herself. Omar placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder, grounding her while maintaining a firm gaze on Bianca. "This stops now," he said. "You will apologize publicly, or the consequences will follow. This isn't about authority. This is about respect." Bianca's expression flickered between fear, shame, and disbelief. For the first time, she understood that her arrogance had met its match. The room held still, tension crackling like static electricity, until Bianca finally muttered a forced apology. But the victory wasn't just in the words. It was in the reclaiming of dignity, in the refusal to be silenced. As Maya exhaled, the adrenaline slowly receding, she looked around at the faces of the onlookers. Some nodded in support, others whispered in awe. And though the immediate conflict had reached its peak, she knew this wasn't the end. There were still battles to fight, systems to challenge, and a voice to raise for others who faced the same injustice. The final moment before the transition to resolution was charged, raw, and unforgettable. Maya, bruised yet unbroken, whispered to herself, This is only the beginning." And in that whisper, the story held its cliffhanger, a promise that courage, resilience, and truth would continue to shape the outcome. The airport had finally calmed. The echoes of confrontation still lingered in Maya's mind, but there was a new clarity, a quiet sense of power in her chest. She had endured public humiliation, prejudice, and the blatant abuse of authority. Yet here she was, standing strong, unbroken. Every step she took toward the exit felt lighter, purposeful, like the weight of injustice had been shifted into something productive. Action. Omar walked beside her, calm but vigilant. He had already spoken to the airline's executive team, ensuring that Bianca's behavior was documented, that proper disciplinary procedures would follow. Maya's slap had become more than a personal violation. It was a spark for systemic accountability. The airline, under the public eye now, could no longer ignore the consequences of unchecked power or prejudice. Later that evening, in the quiet of their apartment, Maya reflected on the day. She had felt fear, anger, and humiliation, but she had also discovered the strength she had carried all along. Holding her belly, feeling the baby stir, she realized that courage was not always loud. Sometimes it was measured, deliberate, and unyielding. Sometimes it was speaking up when the world expects silence. The media had caught wind of the incident, and social media buzzed with videos taken by onlookers. Instead of shaming her, the footage highlighted her resilience and Bianca's overreach. People all over the country debated, shared, and reflected. Maya became a symbol of standing firm against discrimination, of refusing to allow prejudice to silence or diminish her. But the real change was deeper than public attention. The airline immediately implemented training on harassment, bias, and equality in the workplace. Policies were rewritten, oversight strengthened, and managers were reminded that authority was a responsibility, not a weapon. Bianca faced formal consequences. She was suspended and required to attend diversity and sensitivity training before she could ever serve on a flight again. For Maya, the resolution was both personal and communal. She realized that confronting injustice could ripple outward, creating awareness and inspiring change. Her courage had sparked conversations, but more importantly, it had created consequences that ensured no one else would face the same violation without recourse. Family life returned to a new rhythm. Omar, having seen the world's reactions and Maya's bravery, expressed a deeper respect for her strength. Their bond grew tighter, founded on shared understanding and mutual protection. Maya's friends and community rallied around her, offering support, empathy, and admiration. She was no longer just a mother-to-be or a passenger. She was a symbol of resistance, dignity, and moral clarity. Reflecting on the events, Maya understood something vital. Racism and prejudice thrive in silence and complicity. When they are confronted with courage, integrity, and unity, they can be dismantled. Every act of discrimination, no matter how small or large, leaves scars, but every act of resistance, every refusal to accept injustice, creates healing and hope. The final lessons were clear. Prejudice weakens communities. Racism destroys families, and fear allows oppression to grow. Maya had experienced the sting of injustice firsthand, yet her response had proven that courage could counter hate. She had shown the world that dignity was non-negotiable, and that standing up for oneself, even when vulnerable, was an act of profound strength. Months later, as Maya gave birth to her child, the memory of that fateful flight lingered, but no longer held power over her. She had reclaimed her narrative, her identity, and her agency. The baby's first cries were a reminder that life persisted, that hope endured, and that courage had tangible consequences. A safer, more conscious world for the next generation. And so, Maya's story became more than an isolated incident. It became a testament to the power of resilience, the necessity of confronting injustice, and the enduring truth that courage defeats hate. Unity fosters healing, and the human spirit, even in the face of discrimination, is unstoppable. Her last reflection, whispered quietly to herself as she watched the city lights through her window, carried the weight of everything she had endured. This is how change begins, one act of courage at a time.